Quinn with Geek Insider, and this is Lady Geek Presents. I had the pleasure of being at the Space Coast Comic Con on February 8th and 9th, 2020 in Cocoa, Florida, and one of the special guests was Gil Gerard. You might know him as Buck Rogers. He had 2 panels, one each day, and I had the pleasure of being at both. And I can tell you that he's very candid and amazingly open with his audience. He takes questions, he's off script, and he just tells it like it is. One of the things that I came away with is that he's an advocate for the people. Not just the people that he works with, but he is an advocate for you and me and the environment. It's very important to him. He also shared an exciting project that he's working on. He is the co-executive producer of 2491. It's a reimagining of his notable character. Now, he can't say that in the script because of trademark and legal issues, but we know who it is. So, without further ado, I was given special permission by Gil Gerard himself to record his Day 2 panel. So please enjoy an hour with Gil Gerard.
How y'all doing today? Have you had a good time?
Yeah.
Hi.
Absolutely.
So what I do is, rather than me sitting around telling you about all my life story, I'd like to answer questions. I'd like to know what you want to know. And if I know it, I'll tell you, and if I don't, I'll lie about it, and you'll think I know about it anyway.
Yeah.
So who would like to start? Yes, sir.
Who is your favorite?
Great T-shirt, by the way.
Oh.
Who is your favorite female character to play Buck Rogers with?
I liked them all, actually. I was a bit of a never mind, I can't say that. No, I really enjoyed all the people, men and the women that played the various roles on Buck Rogers. I really enjoyed some. Vera Miles, I was really impressed with because, you know, and she was quite a movie actress when I was growing up. What? You can't leave? Are you in the wrong one?
Yeah, I'm in the wrong room.
Did you think this was Star Trek? And you had to get a front seat. But yeah, I enjoyed working with all of them. Men and women. They were interesting people. And Cesar Romero was one of my favorites. Not that he wasn't a woman, but he told me some great stories. Him and other people that he had worked with over the years, the things that they had pulled. It was terrific. Jack Palance was incredible. Very interesting, man. Yeah, they were all good. Well, I was very impressed with, now I can't remember his name, of course. He played Gunga Din. Sam Gaffney was on the show. Now, I was a big fan of, I thought Gunga Din was an incredible role. And then, of course, Marcus, what was the name of that medical show he did?
Marcus Welby.
Marcus Welby.
Dr. Killer.
No, it wasn't right.
What was the other one?
It was like life, death. It had the symbols in the beginning of it.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a doctor show, but I can't remember the name of it. Ben Casey.
Ben Casey.
Yeah. Too bad I couldn't remember. Yeah. All that money on my nose and my mouth won't work. But I had a great time with all of them. Really did. They were fun. Ray Marston, who was My Favorite Martian. Yeah, he was great. Ray Walton, yeah, thank you.
Walton, yeah.
Humiliate me, go ahead. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You
Hey,
had
Wes, how you been?
Good to see you, sir.
How the kids?
I'm doing fine.
All right, good.
Thank you kindly. You had an amazing guest stars you were able to get for the 2 seasons of Buck Rogers, and really just I think made the show all the more memorable. What do you owe to being able to get such great guest cast for 2 years?
I have no idea. I didn't cast them.
Right.
Probably because I was such an incredible freaking actor. They all wanted to work with me. That's not ego speaking, no. I just thought I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
A lot of them were excited to work with me, which I was very complimented about. But it was nice. I enjoyed working with them so much. It really did. And it was great working with the old timers. Of course, I did Airport 77 before I did Buck Rogers. And before Buck Rogers, yes. But I was Jack Lemmon, Olivia de Havilland, Joseph Cotton, Jimmy Stewart. Actually, Jimmy and I did a Hollywood Christmas Parade together. Joseph Cotton, Third Man. I mean, who can forget that? Plus the other things he's done. But I just remember him from Third Man. It's like, whoa, this is Joseph Cotton. And of course, Olivia was terrific. She said she loved me, which I thought was really nice. Yeah, it was terrific. Just to watch these people, I learned a lot because that was like my first big movie in LA, and I came from New York, and that was a whole different sort of thing. But I watched these people, how they related to each other, how they related to the crew. I've always been sort of a sponge, particularly as a young actor. I was always looking, how did, like, I talked to a director, why are you using that lens? What is the difference between that lens and another lens? And they were very, very helpful. They were very happy to tell me, give me that information. I talked to cinematographers about stuff. When we were doing Buck Rogers, why is it framed like this? Actually, that's how I found out we were actually shooting a motion picture instead of a television show. Because the guy said, well, you realize we're doing it in 185 instead of 175. I said, what does that mean? He said, well, 185 is motion picture. That's the framing for a motion picture. So it fills the screen. If you do TV, it's going to be too narrow. So, but I've just always been curious and always wanted to know. When I was doing commercials in New York, I would always talk to the director and the cinematographer. But I just watched them, and I thought, this is a cool way to be. I watched Olivia and Joe, for instance. They love doing crosswords. Now, we were all stuck on that set every day on Airport 77 because it was such a confined set inside this 747 set that you never knew, if the director was going to move the camera just a little bit, suddenly you're in the background of the shot, or you may be in the foreground of the shot, because that's where you were standing before it. So going like this, he may move it like that, and boom, there you are. So we all had to be there. Well, Olivia and Joe would just sit there and do their crossword puzzle. And I was like, okay, instead of, it's like when, I remember as a novice diver, my first dive, I was like, all over the place, and of course my air was gone in about 5 minutes. You watch an older diver, and it's like, as I am now, I can stay down for as long as I want, because I don't do a lot of moving around. I just kind of float and look at things, and I don't do a lot of flapping around. I don't like to disturb the environment down there. But that's what you learn with experience. So I learned from their experience, watching them, how they conserved energy. So it was cool.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'll get you next.
Okay.
I've got my own reason for being here. I'll tell you during the meet and greet.
Okay.
This is my
This is the
granddaughter.
meet and greet.
This is well, I'll tell you. This is my granddaughter. This is her very first con,
Hi.
and I brought her to see you.
What's your name?
Emmy.
Emmy. Nice to meet you. I'm
And
Gil.
I was trying to describe what Buck Rogers in the 25th century was.
Right.
Would you describe it to her? Because I don't know if I did an adequate job.
It was on last night.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
At 11 o'clock.
Duh. You could have shown it to
On
me.
what TV? On Me TV?
I think it was.
Chap.
I think it was the original episode. Wasn't it?
It wasn't. Okay.
Season
Pilot
1, episode 1.
Pilot episode
I'm
was
sorry, I
on
was in
last
bed.
night.
I
You
was
should be
in bed.
ashamed of yourself.
I understand.
I don't care about what you did before you got home. Huh?
You won't remember this moment.
Oh, what?
So, okay, Me TV.
It's a man out of time, out of his own time. Basically what it is. A man who by an accident, ends up 500 years in the future. A man from today, thank you, who's 500 years in the future, and he's having to deal with the fact that everything he knows is gone. I don't think we dealt with it as best we could, but anyway, that was the premise of the whole thing. And then we did all this fantastic sci-fi stuff, some of which I liked and some of which I abhorred. Did I tell you?
Does that help?
Yeah, if he wasn't such a cheap SOB, he would show you the DVD.
Better than that, I will find it and stream it for her.
You know, there is a new one out that's been out for like 3 years. It's not so new, but they have a Blu-ray Buck Rogers,
Okay.
which I've seen, which is amazing. It's incredible. It really is. They remastered the whole thing, and my dance steps finally are in step with the music.
Oh.
No, how much crap I caught because of that. Because what they did was, here's what we did. When we shot a dance scene, you know, they don't have music because you have dialogue. You couldn't have music because that way you don't have to match. Like you're doing a close-up, you know, do this close-up and that close-up. If a certain note is not behind you, it's like, oh, well, you know, it's going to look funny. So what you hear is clicks, and it's just the beat. And you hear just click, click, whatever. So, thank you. So I'm dancing. It really wasn't all that amazing. Save the music for something really wild. So I'm dancing. And what happened also was we spent 2 weeks rehearsing that whole dance thing with our daughter. I was supposed to dance with her and all this kind of stuff. Well, the director didn't tell anybody until we got on the set. And he was like, no, I don't want to do that. Mainly because he didn't want to take the time to shoot all those people that were dancing.
Right.
So he had our doll and I just do a dance close, so he could do a 2-shot, single, period. With everybody in the background dancing around, that was fine, or watching. But that's the reason he did it. So we had to change the entire thing. So we're just, you know, the whole thing about, you know, oh, do the rock and roll thing, and I go over there and so we start dancing. Yeah, exactly. And we do the click, 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 click thing, right? So when the movie came out, all of a sudden it's like, that's not the beat. I was totally off the beat. You know, white men can't dance, I guess. Unbelievable. I was like, Jesus, you guys really screwed me. But what they did was when they did the remastering, this was also in Australia that did this. But it also is universal. It play on any DVD in the world. So they fixed it. So I'm now on the beat. It only took 40 years. I caught so much crap because of that. It was unbelievable. It's like, no, you don't understand. No one cared. It wasn't your fault. Oh yeah, I did one of these.
My ulterior motive for coming here.
Oh, you have an ulterior motive.
My name is Gil Gerard.
Oh really?
Spelled-
Gerard?
It's the same. There's
Don't
not
tell me you're one of my fucking relatives.
cousin Gil.
Where are you from? Where's your family from?
From the Chicago area.
Yeah?
And several years ago, you were in Columbus, Georgia, at the planetarium there for a
Yes.
summer
Right.
event. And my friend who worked there had you sign a picture to my favorite cousin Jim.
Oh, okay.
And that was me.
I'll be damned.
And
I
now I
know
get a
never
chance
signed
to
it.
meet you. And so I'm just thrilled. After 40 years, I finally get to meet my cousin.
Your cousin Gil, yes. Yeah, well, my family, there were 2 brothers that supposedly came over to this country.
From France?
No, actually, they were from the Alsace-Lorraine area of Germany.
Okay.
So here's the story.
Yes.
According to my uncle, who my dad always said was full of shit. But there were supposedly 2 barons named Gerard, and if you ever go to England, check out the London directory. I mean,
Okay.
it's like pages of Gerard,
Mhm.
spelled Gerard, which is amazing. And no, I didn't try to visit any of them. But they supposedly were on a ship traveling someplace. I don't know exactly where they were going, but they were attacked by Spanish pirates, and they were taken from there. They escaped to the Alsace-Lorraine area, and that's where they actually grew up. So they became a German-speaking family, and then they came over from that area, and they settled in Little Rock, Arkansas. They settled in a German community in Little Rock at St. Edward's Catholic Church, and the other uncle, or not the uncle, hell, it was great-grandfather, whatever, he went north, and he may have been the one that went toward Illinois. But they all came down like to Missouri, and then one went north and one came down to Arkansas. So
I remember hearing something about Missouri. So I'll have to take that to my.
it'd be interesting if we were related.
That'd be.
It would really depress the hell out of me, but
Well, I spent 25 years working at NASA, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So.
What'd you do?
I was in the education office, so I did outreach. I went to schools and told kids how to become scientists, astronauts, engineers.
Right.
I've got kids right now that are working on Artemis, and I'm just thrilled that
That's incredible.
I've left a legacy. So.
Yeah. Well, my legacy is that most of the astronauts and scientists in Houston
Grew up watching.
were the reason they're doing it. They
That's
told
right.
me, every one of them has told me that they're the reason they're doing space now because of Buck Rogers. It just blew me away.
Absolutely.
Even the young astronaut class.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was with I've forgotten the guy's name, but he was a former space station commander and also shuttle commander. He did one of the longest spacewalks that they've ever done. Anyway, he was showing me around, and all of a sudden, these whole group of young kids come running, young kids, they're like in their 20s, come running up, and they're like, oh man, we loved your show. And you're the reason we're doing this. I was like, oh shoot, man. I can't take the pressure. But, and all the scientists there. I went up to the labs and saw all the stuff they're doing up there, and it's just like, whoa, if I'd known, I probably wouldn't have been able to say anything. But it was very gratifying that there was that kind of legacy from that show, that was such a positive force in so many people's lives. I was made me very, very proud to be there. I got to drive the Mars rover, the new one they have.
Yeah.
I got to drive that.
The one with the bubble front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went through the Martian landscape that they have there at Johnson Space Center. Yeah, it was wild. I get to go all kinds of really neat stuff. And I don't mind at all. Like someone said, you want to do it? Yeah, I'll do it. I've flown 4 military jets because
There's a
of Buck
launch
Rogers.
tonight.
Wow.
I know. I won't be here.
Oh, that's right. You're flying.
I'm flying out, yeah. I may be gliding at the time.
Watch for a while.
Yeah, but it's been really amazing. I intend to pick the Nassau people's brains because we're doing the new Buck Rogers.
Oh.
I'm co-executive producing 2491, which is the name of the new show, and it's going to be more in line with what I always wanted to do with Buck Rogers, and that is stay on Earth and deal with the problems on Earth. So I really want to talk to the scientists, the environmental scientists, as well as the technical scientists at NASA to see what do they project. What kind of progression do they project? If we don't do anything about global warming or climate change, what do they see happening? Because right now we have environmental refugees coming up from Honduras, which I didn't know about until I read a story about it. It's like, why isn't this being publicized? These people are coming up because all their crops are failing because of climate change. They've been destroyed from the heat. And then we have all this, we have the Air Force is rebuilding all their runways along the coast because they're all going underwater. The Navy is rebuilding all of their docks because they're too low for their ships because of the rising water, which is happening now. So what's going to happen in 450 years? But what I'd like to find out is, what's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? And maybe as a writer, the producer, you take a middle of the road. Say, okay, well, we're not going to be an alarmist. We won't be accused of that. We won't be accused of being naive. We'll do the middle of the road. We'll do sort of, okay, here's what we think might happen, and then we'll just go off from there. But I want it to be at least as factually based as a theory can be. And since we're seeing the progression of stuff going on, no matter who denies it, it is happening. So, there are islands disappearing as we speak. The permafrost is sending up tons of methane into the air, which is only exacerbating the entire problem. It's like, there's no problem. Okay, fine. And as I've said to people who deny it, I hope to God you're right. I really hope that I'm totally wrong. Because if I'm not, we are screwed. it's a graphic. Yes, sir.
Question for you, Gil. If you could send a message to space, what would it be?
Watch out.
Watch out.
No, I send a message to who?
Up into space, wherever he's going to go.
Oh, you mean just put it out there?
Yeah, put it out there.
You might not want to come here because this is a dangerous place. One of the things we're talking about is this is going to be a complete reimagining of the Buck Rogers thing because of all the legal. I'm Major Man. Okay. Of all the legal stuff that's going on with the trademark Buck Rogers, we can't, nor do we intend to use the name Buck Rogers. That's why it's $24.91 instead of Buck Returns or whatever. So my idea is we're going to have a very strong female character. I'm going to be playing the president. This character runs everything, and she only answers to the president. Me. And I'll just put it, see if you can guess. Her genealogy goes back 400 and some years. And there was this guy who was an astronaut who took off, went on a mission in space, and was never seen again.
So it's Buck's.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking about it then. Oh, never going to say Buck.
Uh-huh.
Buck Rogers. So that's where we're going to be. And I asked the lady yesterday in the Q&A, I said, so how does that make you feel? She said, the hair on my arm is raising up. I got goosebumps. Because obviously she's going to be the progeny. Now, if it ever gets straightened out, the whole Buck Rogers trademark, and if we can secure that, guess what's going to happen? Guess who's going to show up? And who's going to meet his progeny? You know? But until that time, we can still do the whole thing and deal with what's happening in 2491 and deal with all the science fiction part of it. We can expand it, of course, and I think make it very interesting. I always thought that the Buck should have stayed on Earth. I thought it would have been far more interesting for people to see what we thought Earth might be like in 500 years, rather than have Buck land after 500 years in space and take right off again. Because I mean, I just thought that's ridiculous. The guy hadn't been here 500 years. Why the hell is he leaving? You know, I always wanted Buck to say to Dr. Hewer, thank you for the offer and all that stuff, you know, to join the director, but I need to put my hand on something that's real to me, that I recognize, and have Buck go out with Tweaky because he was such a popular character, and also he could be a guide for Buck with Theophilus, but go out and sort of see what the world is like, how people are living, how they survive, and I just thought that would be far more interesting for an audience than going off into space and fighting aliens and stuff. So
you want to say Buck stops here?
Buck stops, Buck lands here, and that's it.
Yes.
But there won't be any Buck.
No Buck.
Nobody. No Buck, no Buck Rogers.
No Buck Rogers.
Yeah. But it's you know, I spent a long time, there were stories that I wanted to write. And I had a hell of a time trying to figure out how can I write this as Buck Rogers not be Buck Rogers? How can there be no Buck Rogers? So but now that what happened was I got this script from this guy, and it's like, great, this is the way it works. So, but I told him, I said, look, let's just not have any reference to Buck Rogers at all. Let's just do it this way. And they were like, okay, well, we'll see what we can do. I said, yeah, I'd like for you to do that. That's why I'm a co-executive producer. I said, I don't want to spend 2 years and have somebody at the end of 2 years go, as they did with Buck Rogers. God, that's the best idea we've heard in 2 years. Why haven't we heard it before? Because nobody would listen to me. Yeah, that was after it was too late. So, yes.
What was your initial reaction to the script when you first got it?
What, Buck Rogers?
Yes.
I liked it. That's the reason I did the show.
So was it immediate jump on, you love the message, and
Well, no, what happened was they offered it to me and I turned it down 3 times.
really?
Yeah, without reading it. I just was not interested in doing. I saw what Batman did to Adam West's career. You know, the man didn't work for over 20 years. The only way he could support his family was to do dinner theater. It's literal. That's all he could do. they wouldn't even put him on a quiz show. He couldn't do guests on, make any kind of money in the so-called the big leagues. And I thought, I don't want that. And Adam he's a good guy, and he had a great sense of humor, as was finally shown later, so much later in his life. So I just wasn't interested in doing a cartoon character, a comic book character. And I also was Bop Biff Bam, and I never liked the show. I was always PO'd about Batman because I thought it took away some really great television shows. When Batman was on the air, John Glenn went in orbit for the first time, and they knocked Batman off the air and put it on. Obviously, it's the first American space, right? In orbit. And the television stations all over the country, in this country, were jammed with people complaining about the fact that they had cut out Batman.
Oh my gosh.
Exactly. Like, yeah, that's great. An American is going into space, and you're upset because some fictional character is cut off. Something you can watch next week if you want. Where are your priorities?
Yeah.
And after that, see, the networks are not stupid. They said, oh, look at this. So all of a sudden, you started seeing really good shows like The Defenders and Slattery the People and all these other shows that I grew up with were suddenly disappearing. And all this fluff was coming on. All this crap, pardon my French. And I thought it destroyed television. Television used to be a really quality medium. I watched live theater on television. Paul Newman was on television doing plays. Patty Chayefsky was writing for television. All these incredible American writers were writing. And because of that, all that's left. You realize that, it used to be when I was watching television as a kid, of course I grew up on radio. There was no TV when I was a kid. Didn't see a television until I was in the 6th grade, 12 years old. But we used to have Westinghouse presents 90 minutes, Playhouse 90. Used to have the New York Philharmonic on Sundays, live from Studio 8H, which I got to work in, not with the Philharmonic. I actually sang with the Philharmonic once, but I got to actually watch the Philharmonic when I was a kid growing up. But all this stuff was on the air. It was like it's incredible variety of stuff. You had Western shows, doctor shows, medical shows, Westerns, TV. It was like, wow. You could pick whatever you wanted. And all of a sudden, it all became the same. Everybody had to have the new Batman. And then whenever some crime show would go, everybody had to have that show. And it just was, hi there. It was, it just became this sort of flatline. It was sad to see.
Well, with the new markets now, though, shows like what you
Well,
want to do definitely have a venue.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do. What I really want to do is stream it.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching a lot of the streaming stuff, and it's really amazing. But it's the way television started. I don't know if anybody's ever written or read a book called The Powers That Be. David Halverson wrote it, and it's about CBS, the LA Times, and I think the New York Times. And it talks about how, particularly CBS, when they started, they were just like, let's go. Let's just do whatever we want to do. News was amazing. That was the biggest thing they had going, was their news. And they were like really cutting edge, and they were out there just pounding on the doors and kicking the crap out of people and really exposing a lot of stuff, and they were very courageous. And then once CBS became established and became such a wealthy thing, suddenly they had something to lose, and they began to pull back and become more conservative and to stop being trailblazers. And their programs started, they were kind of afraid to rock the boat anymore because it was now so valuable. What we're seeing today is people who have that same kind of rugged mentality, who are starting new things, and they're not afraid to reach out, to cut the edge, so to speak. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the possibilities we could do with Buck Rogers. So, yes.
What does the 9421 world look like?
You
Is
mean
it just
2491?
2491?
Yeah.
Did I say 24?
You said 9? Huh?
You know what I'm talking about. What is that world?
That's why I said 2491. I had a feeling.
What does that
'Cause I
world
have
look
never
like?
done that myself.
Mhm.
I think it's remarkable that I was able to pick that up the way I've been so perfect my entire life.
I had a dyslexic moment. What does that world look like in your imagination?
Well, that's what I was talking about with wanting to talk to NASA about it. Because it is going to be, you know, what will be happening in 2491. Because obviously, I don't know how, you may be deniers of climate change, that's fine. But I'm not. I know what's going on. I accept the science. I know it's not bullshit, you know. And if we don't do something about it, we're screwed. Okay, that's my feeling about it. If you don't like it, tough shit. You're allowed your opinion. It's fine with me. But anyway, what I'm saying is that what we're dealing with is, okay, what would it be like? But I want to, you know, I could say, oh yeah, we're going to have more, you know, for instance, here's the question. How many environmental people will we have coming forward? How many people will be migrating north because of environmental problems in their own countries? Sorry. Or will we be going north to south? Will it be so bad here? You know, I understand that the breadbasket of America will become a desert if we don't do something about climate change. So what happens? How do we get food? How do we feed ourselves? Forget feeding the world. So you have all these things going on. So it's like, I just would like to sit down with somebody and get a really good educated guess, because that's what it's going to amount to. I mean, no one knows what it's going to be like in 450 years. But given the science, what do you think would happen? What is your best guess? And give me the worst case and the best case. And we'll take something in the center. I have a feeling, and then also, what's the progression? Was there some kind of water war 200 years in the future, which would be 250 years back from where we are? Was there some kind of war that took place over water or land, or, you know, or air rights or whatever? What would we have to be dealing with as an aftermath of 2491? So all these things can be very interesting, but I would like them to be as close to, not factual perhaps, because but the best guess. So that's what my feeling is. I think we'll be in a ton of trouble. But how far in will we be? How far will it just be really starting to get bad, or is it really bad and getting worse? Or is it, oh, well, we were able to pull back and some of the worst is over. So, now she's leaving.
See you later.
Do you have a pass?
No.
Get over here then. Is your pass, do you have to get someone to stamp that pass?
Okay.
So is that satisfactory?
Yes.
I mean, I know it's kind of up in the air, but it's still up in the air for me. I really want to get this thought through.
Yeah, I mean, with the possibilities are endless. You know, you can
Yeah.
have your haves and have-nots and just that conflict in
Exactly.
itself.
Right. And what's the world look like? Forget, I mean, we're talking about America. What about Europe? What about Africa? What about South America? You know, what's happening in Australia? You know, if we have a problem with rising water, which we do have. I mean, there's islands disappearing today because of rising water.
Just don't do Water World.
No,
Please.
I could not figure out how people on water with nothing but water could be that dirty. I mean, you could fall off the boat and get clean by accident. It's like, how are these people so damn dirty? There's nothing but water out there.
That was such a success.
Yeah, I got it.
That's why it was such a box office.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, okay, why are they so greasy and dirty? Yeah, you get clean by accident. Yeah, we're gonna avoid Water World. I hope.
You're right.
Thank you.
Water World.
Yes, sir.
celebrity special,
Yeah.
the Circus with the Stars. So what was it like doing all those celebrity specials?
Oh, that was great. I really enjoyed it. I worked with an elephant act.
Oh,
And the
wow.
guy he told me, he said, you're going to have to learn the act. You have to be able to run the act or you won't be able to do it. So I had worked with the elephants. I rehearsed for about a month with these elephants. And I actually broke my rib doing it in the rehearsal.
Wow.
I don't know if you don't get an idea of the size of an elephant until you were like standing on top of his head. But the elephant's name was Anime, and part of the show was Anime was laying on her side in the ring, and I was standing at the back of the ring, and I'd yell, Anime up. And as she started to rise up, what happens with an elephant is they kind of do this, and then they rock this way, and then they kind of rock this way, and then they boom. And so as she's doing that, I'm running up her back to stand on her head, and so she did the whole thing, and I'm running up the back, and I'm boom. And of course, the head of an elephant is about this big around, about that big. So I'm here, and just as I rise up, she settles back. And all she did was just settle back like that, and it broke my rib.
Oh.
And I'm about 20 feet up in the air. Like, oh shit.
Oh.
So I went ahead and stood on her head and what they call styling, and then I came down and then finished the act, and then toward the end of the act, there's a leopard in the act. And the leopard leaps from the back of the elephant into my arms, and I throw her over my shoulders, and I walk around with this leopard on my, And of course, when the leopard hit my rib, it really felt great. And then we hadn't shot the show yet. This was just a rehearsal. So when we finished the show, the rehearsal, and then I said, I think I need to go see somebody. So they took me to the local orthopedic or whatever. And he said, we don't really tape up ribs anymore. He said, it's broken in here. And he said, it's not broken, like compound fracture. It's just cracked. So I said, well, can I do the show? He said, yeah. And he said, I would say go ahead and film it when they want to, because if the longer it takes, the more pain you'll be in. So I said, okay. So I shot the entire show with a broken rib, with doing the elephant act. Anime just passed away about 2 years ago. And so that was amazing, just to be able to work with those animals and to sort of get to know them a little bit was an incredible experience for me. But of course, the next day I flew back to LA that night from Vegas, and the next day we shot the entire fight scene with Hawk. We were on Vasquez Rocks, and all that entire fight scene was shot with a broken rib. Going up and down the rocks and falling and tumbling and fighting and everything else. So, showbiz, it's glorious.
Yeah.
That wish there ain't no other bit as like. So, but that was, that's just the way it is. The show must go on. I mean, I was doing a show called The Doctors, and I had 105 fever, and I worked for 3 days like that. Because, there's people waiting on it. It's like you can't just not show up, because there's nobody else they can put in your place. So you go do it. Then you go home and go on oxygen for a while, and you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you go to work again.
Do it all over again.
That's just the way it is. And we did 42 pages of script a day, and I had the script memorized by the second run through. I was lucky.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who really suffered, and it's like, thank you God. I don't have a photographic memory, but I was able to just look at a script and run it through one time in my head, and I had it. So to the point where the director took advantage of me in that respect, because if we were running long, he would come up to me when it was my turn to do my act, and he would say, Gil, he said, we're running a little long. So he'd go to the script and he'd go, okay, go from page 11 to the middle of the page there, and he said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then bring it into the bottom of page 18. And that was on my way to the set.
Oh, jeez.
And I would do it. I was able to do it. I just like drip, erase that, boom, edit it, walk out, and that was it. It just ran smoothly.
Wow.
But I was lucky. I knew it was, I was blessed. Like, thank you God. Because it wasn't because I was a great intellectual giant. I just had the gift to be able to do that. And of course, the very first scene I had, I was playing a heart surgeon, and it was with my Uncle Matt, who was the head of the hospital and had been on the show for like 100 years, and I was the new guy on the show, and so I was his nephew. So we're doing this surgery, and I had a line where I talked about I think it was a woman character. Where are you going? You're not allowed. So I had to stop right there and go, well, obviously she's got mitral stenosis, right? And I forgot it. He was like, do you have to humiliate me on national television? And we shot it as if it was live. There was not like, okay, stop, let's go back. We shot it on a very narrow time zone because we had like 15 minutes extra. That was it. And if we had to reshoot something, which we did have to do once, the entire crew, it had to be done in the last 15 minutes that we had, because that crew went to NBC Nightly News. We were at Rockefeller Center, 30 Rock, and we were on the third floor shooting on that studio. They went immediately to there, and then we couldn't shoot until they were back, and they would all be on Golden Time. So it was a hugely expensive situation if we didn't get everything shot like we were supposed to. But one time we did, very end of a shot, this big dramatic scene between two characters who were like really going at it. And as it faded out, the light exploded.
Oh, jeez.
So you hear this loud bang.
Oh.
Well, we can't end the show on that because everybody thinks somebody got shot. So they had to hurry and fix the light, relight, set it up, redo it, and start and do the scene again and do that all in 15 minutes.
Jeez.
Yeah, but they got it done. It's amazing. Showbiz.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the pressure. I love being the guy. You know, in basketball they talk about, the Larry Bird, the guy that, that's the guy that takes the last shot. I like to be the guy that took the last shot. In the championship game, game's on the line, I want to be the guy that takes the last shot. I love it. I love the pressure of it. Yes, sir.
Captain Rogers, Lieutenant Commander Gary, United States Navy. Pleasure to meet you. I retired out of Cape Canaveral, but still work down there now. Submarine Force, 28 years. One thing I have to say is when I found you were here today, it's a bucket list for me. I'm gonna meet you. Growing up, there was another show you were on that I enjoyed was Battle of the Network Stars.
Oh yeah.
Thoroughly enjoyed that. I watched you on BTV up there last night at my parents in Tennessee. My title on Xbox is Ezra Hutton. Which most people never knew. I said, let me pick something from my childhood that I love. One of my favorite episodes of all time. When you're on the submarines, we don't have a lot of, there's no interaction. Right? I'm on the Trident submarines out of Kings Bay, Georgia, Bangor, Washington when we went. So you would bring your own entertainment out there. So I would bring your VHS tapes and shows. When the young sailors would call me on mission, it would be your theme. And I would introduce them as I've done my son to that genre, which was the best genre in my opinion.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you more when I get an autograph later, but pleasure to be here.
Thank you. My wife's 20 years in the Navy, retired. She was a chief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was the chief and went over to the dark side.
That's the only way to think, right?
Yeah, I did a Star Trek. It's that fan thing. New Horizons, I think it's called. Or something. Yeah. And when they asked me, I was up there actually talking to them about doing something else. And they said, we get this role. Would you do it? And said, Admiral Sheehan, I think I played. And I said, yeah, I'll go to the dark side.
That's what they say when you earn a commission. They call it David Mustang. I know your wife's familiar with that. So.
Probably.
Well, the chief's like, you quitter, where are you going?
Yeah.
I'll get paid more money when I retire. So.
There you go. was something else. Something else. I mean, because I did that Star Trek thing for this fans thing. It's a free fan site. It's a fan production or whatever. Fan produced, that's what it is. And so I did a Star Trek panel. And I gotta tell you, man, Star Trek people do not have a sense of humor. You do my panel, you laugh. We have a good time. We're not curing cancer here. This is sci-fi, science fiction. If you can't have a good time, what in the hell are you doing here? I was like, this is crazy. No one smiles even. Like, what's the matter? Don't you guys like Star Trek? I think it's, I was never a big fan of the show, but it's like, if I was that big a fan, I think I'd try to find some fun in it.
What was your favorite episode? I'm still already asked that. I know.
On what?
On Buck Rogers. What was your favorite?
Well, other than the movie, my favorite, even though it was in the second season, which I really hated, was the Satyr.
I just saw that one.
Yeah, because it gave me an opportunity to do more than just be the hero of the day. I was able to play a character. I was able to have some evolution of a character. Plus, it also, the whole atmosphere of the show, that particular show, visually to me was it represented what I always wanted to happen with Buck. Even though it was on another planet, it still looked an awful lot like Earth, which I hate to tell you, it really was. But that was sort of what I saw Buck doing. Like being there, and of course Twiki was with me, but dealing with helping somebody out who was having a problem or whatever, as this woman was because her husband had this virus. I could accept all that stuff with the whip and the guy becoming a satyr and all that because of the virus. It was justified. It's like, who knows, 500 years there may be some stupid virus that does that. Who knows? But I could accept that. It's like, you are talking science fiction. It didn't have to be, it wasn't a documentary about what life would be like in 500 years. So all that stuff I could accept, and that's why I liked it. It was like, that's one of the shows I wish we had been doing more of, that type of show. And of course I got to go with the horns and all that kind of stuff.
I was trying to tell between season 1 and 2 as a fan, when you go to the searcher and then they get rid of Mel Blanc's voice, freaky, and then
Yeah, well, we got him back.
Gray kind of changes from the part.
Yeah, we call that Dairy Queen in space. But we got Mel back. Yeah, I told him, I said, you either get Mel back or you get another project.
Yeah, I might.
And they got Mel back. See, when the name of the show is Buck Rogers and you're playing Buck Rogers, they don't mess with you. Yeah, it's one of the perks. You work your ass off, but it's still one of the perks to it. I really cared about this show, not just about what I did in the show. I cared about the whole show. I really wanted it to be as good as it could possibly be. So the first season, I literally rewrote every script. Because when I get the scripts, the raw, they were horrible. So I would sit down and start writing. And every break I had, I was rewriting stuff. And initially, the story editor was giving me a hard time. They finally fired her, and they got another story editor in who was willing to work with me. So we would sit together on my lunch hours and breaks and whatever, and we would go over. What do you think of this? Why don't we do this? Okay, and he would write, and I would write. We came together with something that was good. It was more creatively satisfying than to be able to work with somebody instead of just sitting there alone doing it. And one of the reasons that Erin Gray was such a strong character, because they weren't trying. They were going to keep her sort of all the time. We had a scene in the movie where there was a ball, not the ballroom scene with Ordala. That was a huge thing. This was a little short scene that took place at the Bonaventure Hotel in L.A. And so we were getting ready to shoot it, and I looked out at all the extras and stuff, and I noticed that all the men were in uniform and all the women were in gowns. And I said, how come there's no women in uniform other than Wilma? are you telling me that she's the only woman that can do this? I said, you know, we've gone through whatever we've gone through this terrible time. We need every available mind we can get, no matter who they are, no matter what sex they are. And so they said, well, you know, that's just the way it is. I said, well, it's not going to be the way it is now. I said, I want you to go back and I want you to get uniforms for some of the women, and I want you to get civilian dress for some of the men, and I want you to change this. And so they did. They shut down production. They went back to the Universal, which is, we went from downtown LA to Universal, which is in the valley, and then back again. They didn't like it. It cost about $100,000 in production costs, not to get anything done. But they came back and they changed all the uniforms that I asked them to change, and put women in uniform, men in civilian stuff, and then we shot the scene. And I said, now, that was really good, but I said, this is what I want you to do from now on. I want women, guards, pilots, whatever, mechanics. I want women in all these roles as well as men. And I said, I don't want anybody to say anything about it. I don't want any character. I don't want Buck going, wow, how come all these women are doing this? I said, I just want it to be. Because I said, there's going to be young girls watching this show. Hopefully she will be. There'll be young girls watching this show, and I want them to just see, wow, you know, just subliminate even, that they could be a pilot, they could be a mechanic, they could be a guard, they could be whatever they wanted to be. And I said, that's what I want this show to do. So that's why they did it. Now remember, this is 1979. We're talking in 2020. So I caught a lot of flack for it. But you know, it's like, that's just the way it's got to be. So that's why there are strong women characters in Buck Rogers, and why there will be a strong women character in the new Buck Rogers.
$24.91, you mean?
Yes, exactly. I can't believe I said that. Anyone recording this, please erase it. It'll be part of the lawsuit. Yes, thank you. Ooh, I'm old. I lose track. You know? See, I was back 40 years ago. Yeah, this is my 50th year in the business, believe it or not.
Wow.
Yeah, I've been doing this for 50 years. Started in 1969. In August, I went to New York from Little Rock, Arkansas, and started driving a cab and going to acting school. Yeah, they killed 7 drivers that year that I was driving, and I drove at night, and that's when they were getting killed. But yeah, initially, I don't know how many of you have been to New York and gotten in the cab, besides the smell. You know, they have that shield down the back, that's steel backing to the thing. They have the bulletproof. Well, they started with a bulletproof partition, and what happened was that whatever was happening, they would take a bayonet and kill the cabbie through the seat, and then steal the money. So that's why they put the steel thing down, so that they would, and also they couldn't shoot them through the seat. So I had only one instance where I thought that I was in trouble, and luckily it didn't happen. So, but I only did that for like 6 months, and then I got my first job, and since 1970 till today, I've only made a living in this business, which has been kind of cool. Yes, ma'am.
Have you ever considered writing a memoir?
I have.
I only ask because I'm a small publisher, and I have one of our authors is an actor, John Mayhem, and his life sounds very similar to yours. He wrote it over by himself.
Well, then you've read it. That's it.
He was in the taxi, and he started in New York and in
Oh yeah,
LA.
we all wrote. In
I
those
know,
days,
so
we
it's
all
just,
wrote
it's
that.
just interesting that he's in a different direction, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
just interesting.
I drove through the
Stories.
blizzard of, I think it was 69, 70, early 70. And it was so bad I think I was one of 10 cabs on the streets of Manhattan. And I used to double and triple and quadruple up. Because people were just standing, there was no cab. So I would just go straight up Madison Avenue. And I'd pick up the first person and I go, okay, here's what's going to happen. You're going to pay whatever's on the meter when I get you home. And we're going to pick up people along the way. I'm going to pick up three more people. There's going to be one with me and 2 in the back with you. And they're going to pay whatever's on the meter. But I said, at least I'll get you all home. And I said, everyone said, great, no problem. So I would pick up 4 people and drive them all home, take the money and go back, go right up Madison Avenue again. It was like there were people standing out in this horrible blizzard. So, yeah. Then I found out that I was driving late at night, because I drove at night. When I was driving late at night, I noticed there were a lot of black women who were lining up looking for cabs, and no one would stop for them. So I stopped with this lady. And I said, she was going to Harlem. I said, fine. And she said, would you pick up my friends along the way? I said, sure. I said, but this is what we'll do. I did the same thing, We'll, whoever's last pays what's on the meter. And you pay whatever's on the meter when you. So she said, fine. So I would pick up every night then. I was picked up these. 4 black ladies every night. Drive them up to Harlem. And then about 3 in the morning, I'd be driving along. I used to go across 110th Street, which is the beginning border of Harlem. It was incredible. It was like a whole different society. But it was interesting. I was just, like, wow, this is kind of cool. And then I'd dive back down into Manhattan and start working.
You sound like you've had very interesting stories that other people haven't heard. That's why
It's possible, yeah. I was on the march from Selma to Montgomery. I was one scared white boy, I gotta tell you. Yeah. That was something else. That was me, that was before I was ever an actor. I just thought this isn't right. You shouldn't be treating people like this. So I went and joined the march in support. Yes, sir, you had your hand up?
Yeah, do you stay in contact with Aaron and the other stars?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the ones that are still alive. Twiggy, Felix I talk to all the time. Aaron I don't talk to quite as much, but I see her from time to time. So, yeah. Tim, of course, passed away, unfortunately. Tom's an asshole, so I don't care. And I'm not going to amend that. Anyway. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Do you have any pets?
Pets? We have birds. We have 3 birds. We used to have more birds. And it's heartbreaking when they die. It just breaks your heart. We have 2 parrotlets. Actually, only one now. One of the parrotlets died, which is it's a full-grown parrot that's this big. Meanest little in the world. She's my bird, of course. I'm the only one that can scratch her beak without being bitten. I can take her, carry her around. I carry her around like this, with her head sticking out, and I swing around like she loves that kind of stuff. She feels like she's in my hand. You can't see her. And she's full grown. And then we have a Kaka, Mamie? No. We have 2 of the same, but they're separated. One's a new bird and the other's a bird actually that we raised from an egg.
Oh, wow.
We had the breeding pair, and then the mother, the female, died after giving birth to 7 different birds that we raised and then sold. And we kept the first one. His name was Tweet. I wonder where that came from. And then Murdoch. My son loves Murdoch, the Canadian thing. So that's why he named him Murdoch. He wanted another bird. Because his bird passed away. His bird died. And he wanted another bird, so we got him one. He's autistic, but he takes care of the birds. So, and he loves them. So we had to get him a new bird. So he named it Murdoch. and then Tweak. Like I said, I don't know where that came from. Probably from Tweaky, or Twiggy. Twiggy. I did a show with Twiggy. I co-hosted a musical with Helen Reddy. And she and I sang duets together, and I sang, and got to meet Twiggy. She's a really incredible young woman. Really liked her a lot. She was terrific. Great sense of humor, great energy, fantastic young woman. And they did a story on her. She's quite the entrepreneur, apparently. She wasn't just some skinny broad who wore clothes with her. So, yeah. So anybody else? Come on.
Where do you call home?
I call home. It's in Georgia. I live there now. It's my wife's fault. So I met her. I was living in Los Angeles, and she couldn't take the climate in Los Angeles. It was too dry. She has allergies and stuff, and she said I'll have nosebleeds every day. So I said, I can live in Georgia. You know, a lot of rednecks, but that's okay. So I said, you know, there's an international airport in Georgia. I can go anywhere from there. And within a month of moving to Georgia, I was in Bulgaria shooting a movie. So it's like, yeah, see? That was an interesting thing. I'd never been to an Iron Curtain country. This, of course, was a former Iron Curtain country, and one of the belt buckles on the Iron Curtain. But it was an interesting country. It was really something to see. We've stayed in Sofia, which is the capital of Bulgaria. They drove me out to the set, which is the location, which was amazing. They had an entire western town built there, and we shot it. It was called Ghost Town, and I played a preacher. But on the way out there the first time, we would go on this road, and it's farmland and stuff, which is kind of interesting. Farmland is farmland, really. And it's interesting. You're in Bulgaria, but it looks like it could be North Carolina. Farmers are farmers. You know, the people of the land. But we'd turn, go through this village, and it literally looked like World War II and ended the day before. Because all the houses were pocked with shell marks, shell holes. And still, it's from World War II. These things were still damaged like that. And people were living in it. It's not like they were abandoned. It was like this was a village. They just never had the money to repair them. So then we go through that, and then we went out to that thing. Then one of the guys on the crew took me across Bulgaria to another area, which I was very appreciative, because I said I'd really like to know something about Bulgaria. You know, how many times I'm going to be able to be here. I didn't know there were Roman ruins in Bulgaria. They were settled by the Romans. There was an amphitheater, and it's so well preserved that they even have the plumbing that the Romans used to use their water. And the interesting is that all the plumbing, all the pipes were lead. And they said this is one of the reasons that the Roman Empire fell, because all these people were getting lead poisoning and going mad. That's why some of the emperors were nuts, because they were drinking the water. Yeah, that's something I didn't know until I got there. Went to some of the local restaurants and enjoyed some of the Bulgarian food. One of the greatest things that happens is we're driving to this village, and look out, and there's this dry riverbed. And he said, that's where Alexander the Great marched his armies back to Macedonia. And I'm like, whoa. I mean, it's like, wow. Incredible. Alexander the Great was right there. You know? Of course, a little bit before my time, but you know. Oh, I'm not that damn old.
I know.
Yes.
Did you do your own stunt?
It's Peter, right?
Yes.
Good to see you again.
Yes.
Did I do my own stunts? No. Hell no. I did some, and I wish I hadn't. I did too many of my own stunts, but not in Buck Rogers. I had a really, really good stunt guy, stunt double, who passed away, unfortunately, about 4 years ago, quite suddenly. but Mike was incredible, and he was like a double black belt. I'll tell you, the reason we did the martial arts thing, it was a conscious decision on my part, because I said, kids are going to be watching this show, and I don't want little boys beating each other up in fist fights, or beating up their little sisters, or little sisters beating up their brothers. So I said, let's do something that would require training to be able to do. So we decided to do martial arts. So that's why all those fight scenes are all martial art type things. Because I thought, if they want to do it, if they like that, I want them to be able to say, to their parents or whatever, say, well, you're going to need to take training to do that. You can't just be throwing these kicks around and everything else. So that's why we did that. But Mike did the stuff that really he was trained to do. It would have taken me years. He had years and years of work. He actually worked with Bruce Lee and trained Bruce Lee's son.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, who said that? All right. But anyway, that's why I didn't do it. What I did was the coverage. He made me look good. The only stunt I ever did that he didn't do, I wouldn't let him do, was riding a horse. Because Mike was not a horseman. I was. I was training in dressage, and I was jumping horses and all that kind of stuff. So I knew how to handle a horse. And so we had a scene where I was riding the horse against. I don't think it was Buck Rogers. I think it was.
Yes.
It was on Sidekicks, I believe.
No. You did ride in.
Did I ride on
Buck Rogers?
Okay.
I
don't need to know. Anyway.
It's in the first season.
First season.
Season 1, episode 10, I think. It's the one where the mother buys you to be the husband of her daughter.
Okay.
And there's...
I'm gonna have to look at that one again. And I said Buck never got laid. See?
The daughter is against it, and you take the daughter away to talk to the warring party. There's a war going on between.
Let me just tell the story real quick, okay? We'll watch that. Mike riding a horse looked like a monkey fucking a football. And I say that only because the guy that taught me how to ride, his name was Corky Randall. He trained, you see the new Black Stallion that they did, this beautiful bike. He trained that Black Stallion. I was there learning to ride and learning dressage and all that when Corky was training this horse to just with hand signals do all the stuff that he was supposed to do. But anyway, Corky told me that when I first started riding. He said, you look like a monkey. So I said to Mike, Mike, I gotta tell you, you're not riding in this scene. I'm doing this. That's it, for that reason. I'm not gonna repeat it. Well, hi Dave, how you been? It's 12 minutes past 1.
I know. I promise I can give you 2 more.
Is there somebody waiting?
Yeah, we do have them.
Screw them. Is it all paranormal?
No. It's really cool kimono.
Really cool kimono?
Yeah, she's how to dress in kimono.
How to dress in kimono? Oh.
No, if you want to be her model, she's looking for a model.
That's okay. Yeah. They look comfortable, I gotta say.
Yeah.
Except for all the other stuff you have to do with it.
Yeah.
The backpack and all that. What does that backpack mean?
No, I'm hoping we find out.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're gonna be here for it.
Probably not.
You've been waiting for this your whole life.
Look at this kid.
All right, well, we'll cut it off there with the monkey doing whatever.